In approaching a topic like the HHS mandate, one has to draw upon some really deep sources for information, and who better to go to than G.K. Chesterton? And he is speaking to us from 100 years ago, just shy of 100 years ago, when he says this. And by the way, you will be hearing from Pope Benedict and Cardinal Dolan and Bishop Laurie as well, in helping you frame the position that the Catholic Church and other religious institutions are taking. But this is Chesterton. The old paternal authority will be swept away. Its place will be taken not by liberty, but by the far more sweeping and destructive authority of the state. The state will become the only absolute in morals, so that there can be no appeal from it to God or to man, to Christendom or to conscience, to the individual or the fellowship of all mankind. From 100 years ago, he said that. And what did we just hear about a month ago? You've got 1 year. There'll be no appeals. There'll be no exceptions. You can turn to no one to be excused from this mandate. He hit it right on the head. We will not be able to appeal to our faith if this goes through, or to our conscience, or to any fellowship that we might belong. Chesterton went on to say this: the old morality, the Christian religion, the Catholic Church, differed from all this new mentality because it believed in the rights of men. It believed that ordinary men were clothed with powers and privileges and a kind of authority. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Government did not give us these rights. Thus, the ordinary man had the right of property, the right to be the judge of his children's health, not to have that health, that little lunch bucket inspected and having mom's lunch bucket food replaced and substituted with chicken McNuggets. Something wrong when the state assumes that kind of authority where paternal authority used to be respected. Now, he says, this is Chesterton, in these primary things, the most basic, fundamental, primary things in which the old religion trusted a man, the philosophy of socialism distrust him. Like so many other philosophies, it is a threat to primary things. What the world can no longer see is that it was the Catholic Church that laid the foundations for Western civilization. And that is the point that Chesterton's making. Now let's jump forward to Cardinal Dolan of New York. He is now the president of the Bishops' Conference, and he says this to you and to I. Never before have we faced this kind of challenge to our ability to engage in the public square as people of faith and as a service provider. If we do not act now, the consequences will be grave. If we do not act now, the consequences will be grave. We do worry indeed about freedom of religion. Editorials already call for the removal of guarantees of religious liberty. We live in an era, this is Cardinal Dolan, in an era that seems to discover new rights every day and then expects government and culture and society to pay for it. Pay for my sexual promiscuity, it's your obligation. I want to be promiscuous. What is wrong with that picture? What is wrong with that kind of mentality? And for the public to react in favor of that position is really sad. The cardinal went on to say this: the church emphasizes responsibility more than rights. Responsibilities have always accompanied rights. There were 10 amendments that ensured our rights, but today it's like I demand the right not to be offended, you know? And if I see the practice or expression of faith anywhere, I'm offended, and my rights need to be respected. If the experience of those few other states and countries where this is already law, I wonder what region of the world where he'd be talking about, Cardinal Dolan. Europe, you know, where this is already law is any indication the churches and believers will soon be harassed, threatened, and hauled into court for their convictions. This is coming, everyone. This is down the road if we don't stop this direction. Now, Daniel Hannan, a minister of Parliament over in England, who had a great love for the United States, came over here with a warning. And this is what he said: if you, meaning the United States, repeat our mistakes, we know exactly what lies in store for you. I am living in your future, or at least the future your leaders seem intent on taking you. And believe me, you are not going to enjoy it. We're screeching towards the cliff with a few politicians desperately trying to hit the brakes. When we look in the rear view mirror, we see you desperately trying to accelerate, to catch up with them. Wait a minute, do we really want to follow them over that cliff? And he is trying like a prophet to warn us, don't go in this direction. You will not want to be there. You will not like it. And he is so right. Now, seeking to fortify the church's response to the erosion of religious freedom, the bishops have created a special ad hoc committee for religious liberty. And the chair of that committee is Bishop Laurie. And this is what Bishop Laurie, he is now the newly appointed Bishop of Baltimore. So when you think of it, Cardinal Dolan, Archbishop Chaput, Bishop Laurie, Cardinal Wuerl, boy, that Northeast Carter is starting to look pretty strong. This is not by accident. The Pope has a strategy, and he is really concentrating some courageous shepherds where there are concentrations of media, and they need to be there because that is where the culture is. This is Bishop Laurie. The bishops have concluded that religious liberty is under assault from a variety of fronts in the United States at the federal, state, and cultural level. The cultural level. The late Andrew Breitbart said, culture is upstream from politics. Culture is upstream from mostly everything. It is a shared way of living, of thinking and acting. And there has been, and there must continue to be, an American culture rooted in Western civilization. But there's an anti-culture that literally says we don't have a shared vision. There is no shared values. You can make up your own. What is happening, Bishop Laurie says this, in our culture is that organized religion is being marginalized. This means that religion is being reduced to a private avocation. If you want to go to church on Sunday, fine. But if you want to have institutions that function in the culture and seeks to exert an influence on the culture, that is not fine. The church and its institutions are mediating structures between the power of the state and the individual. Religious freedom is vital to our culture. It's vital to our shared way of living, thinking, and acting. Now we go to Pope Benedict, and he says this: all the energy that the church brings to the advancement of humanity is manifested when she is able to operate in a climate of freedom. She cannot do that in China. The Pope is in Cuba today, urging that Cuba grant freedom to the church so that she can help the Cuban people. But she cannot do that in Cuba. She cannot do that where there is radical socialism. In not a few cases, that freedom is impeded by prohibitions and persecutions, or is limited when the church's public presence is reduced. The Holy Father here, there is a strong current of secularist thought that aims to make God marginal in the lives of people and society by proposing and attempting to create a paradise without him. Yet experience tells us that a world without God becomes a hell, filled with selfishness, broken families, hatred between individuals and nations, and a great deficit of love and joy and hope. You know, they used to say, if you went to the Soviet Union in the 1950s, under the height of communism and Stalin, you could look at the face of the Russian people, and every amount of joy was sucked out of them. They were 100% joyless. And that is what a society without God produces. No joy of spirit. And that is so sad. Now here's Chesterton. And this, I jump up and down and cheer his remarkable insight. He says this: we do not need a censorship of the press. We have a censorship by the press. It is not we who silence the press. It is the press that silences us. Knowledge is now a monopoly, and it comes through to the citizens in thin and selected streams, exactly as bread might come through to a besieged city. They sit in their offices and decide what they think you need to know. You have participated in March for Life down in Washington, where hundreds of thousands of marchers have gathered, and it's a non-event. And why? We don't like that issue. It's not going to hit the news. It's not going to be covered because we have decided you, the besieged city, does not need that bread, does not need that information. And that is so sad. And yet a George Clooney by himself can go down and make the front pages of the newspaper. And it's not to say that the Sudan is unimportant. It is to say that a censor has decided that George Clooney, an actor who made his fame by playing other people, is more important than 200,000 March for Lifers. And there is something wrong about that, and it is a censorship. To go on, this is the Holy Father. In our time, the price to be paid for fidelity to the gospel is no longer being hanged, drawn, and quartered, but it often involves being dismissed out of hand, ridiculed, and parodied. Just watch the Letterman show, or Jay Leno, or the morning talk show with Joy Behar, or whomever, and your values, your faith is going to be ridiculed, mocked, laughed at, and we all want to belong. And the message is, if you share those kinds of values, you don't belong. You're not hip. You're not with it. And that is a major concern. That's the culture at work there. This is Pope Benedict. It is often maintained that the creation of institutions was sufficient to guarantee the fulfillment of humanity's right to development. Unfortunately, too much confidence was placed in those institutions. Man falls into the trap of thinking he can bring about his own salvation and ends up promoting a dehumanized form of development. 1914 was the height of progressivism, and 1914 was the outbreak of World War I. those two events are related because people thought, we can do this without God. We can build the eternal city right here. We can build what Robert Tuchman, that great historian, called the Proud Tower. The Proud Tower was really the Tower of Babel, and human beings thinking themselves gods. And the Holy Father today is pointing that out. We've placed too much hope in institutions, and those institutions have left us with Detroit and with places that are just, they have replaced families, they have replaced the basic cell that builds civilization, and that is most unfortunate. Now, the Health and Human Services Department, under the pro-choice Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, is trying to require that health insurance policies include contraceptive and abortion services. Churches will supposedly be exempt from this requirement, but other religious organizations like universities and hospitals and charitable agencies will not. In January of this year, Pope Benedict, speaking to Catholic bishops from the United States at their ad liminem visit, said this: "It is imperative that the entire Catholic community in the United States come to realize the grave threats to the Church's public moral witness presented by a radical socialism, which finds increasing expression in the political and cultural spheres." Boy, Chesterton, Benedict, are they hot sinking? I think so. You know, they're syncing up. They're absolutely in lockstep in seeing what we are facing out there. Of particular concern, this is our Holy Father now, are certain attempts being made to limit that most cherished of American freedoms, the freedom of religion. Many of you, meaning the bishops, have pointed out that concerted efforts have been made to deny the right of conscientious objection on the part of Catholic individuals and institutions with regard to cooperation in intrinsically evil practices. Abortion, abortion-producing drugs, contraceptives, intrinsically evil practices. The Catholic bishops of the United States called literally unconscionable a decision by the Obama administration to continue to demand that sterilization, abortifacients, and contraception be included in virtually all health plans. Today's announcement, now this was when Obama had come out with the compromise. Today's announcement means that this mandate and its very narrow exemption will not change at all. Instead, there will only be a delay in enforcement against some employers. What does the president want to do? Desperately get beyond November. Desperately get, and then there'll be no restraints on him. Cardinal Dolan, speaking for the bishops, said this: "This shouldn't happen in a land where free exercise of religion ranks first in the Bill of Rights. In effect, the president is saying we have a year to figure out how to violate our consciences. To force American citizens to choose between violating their consciences and foregoing their health care is literally unconscionable. It is as much an attack on access to health care as on religious freedom. Historically, this represents a challenge and a compromise of our religious liberty. Don't impose your teaching upon us and make us do, as a church, what we find unconscionable to do. The Health and Human Services fight is a freedom of religion battle. It is not about contraception. It is not about women's health. No, we are talking about an unwarranted, unprecedented, radical intrusion on the interior life and integrity of a church's ability to teach and serve and sanctify its own people. Let me just read in conclusion the Obama administration told Cardinal Dolan and the bishop's office, send your staff over and we'll work out any wrinkles or concerns you might have. When they got there, they were told that the mandate was not going to change and had already been filed. Then they were lectured that the bishop's staff, ought to listen to other Catholic leaders who are more enlightened than their bishops. Cardinal Dolan was not happy that the Obama administration was literally saying to its own staff, don't listen to your bishops, listen to America Magazine. Something radically wrong with that position. The White House, Cardinal Dolan says this, seems to think we bishops simply do not know or understand Catholic teaching. And so, taking a cue from its own definition of religious freedom, now has nominated its own hand-picked official Catholic teachers. I am encouraged, I think that's probably a hint to probably, or I don't know, no? All right, hey, well, I'm going to regard it as a hint and begin to wrap up here. But I would like you to know this. On March 15, 2012, at the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, their statement was this: this is not a fight we want or ask for, but one forced upon us by government on its own timing. Finally, this is not a Republican or a Democratic, a conservative, or a liberal issue. It is an American issue. Just yesterday, I was watching the justices, and boy, their questioning is really good about this mandate. Fills me with hope that they understand what's at stake here. Justice Scalia said this: if the government can do this, what is it that the government cannot do? And that's the kind of government that a totalitarian regime wants. That's the kind of government the goal of this administration is to produce. And everyone, there is so much at stake here. Your grandparents or great-grandparents may have stormed the beaches of Normandy, but the fight that you are engaged in is not the fight against totalitarianism as a political system. It is for the soul, the spiritual soul of the United States of America. And you need to be in this fight, every one of you. And we need to deliver a clear message. This mandate is unacceptable. We will not follow this mandate. I think it was St. Augustine who said an unjust law is one that is out of harmony with the law of God. Well, this mandate is out of harmony with the law of God. I want you to know Franciscan University will not follow this mandate. I want you to know Franciscan University will take the federal government to court, and it will do so very soon. I salute Ave Maria University for having done that already. We are in dialogue with some other institutions in the church, and it's been that dialogue that why we have waited. But the day is coming, and your prayers are needed. Your prayers and then your activity are also needed. God bless you all. Thank you.